Good evening, everyone. Welcome to all of you from the International Dyslexia Association, Northern New England Alliance, serving Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. I'm Susan Horahan, the president of IDA-NNEA. Welcome to our Read for Parents webinar featuring tonight Andrea Pollock and Christine Reilly, and they will be discussing the IEP language and understanding and learning from the IEP. As a branch, we're thrilled to provide these Read for Parents webinars every other month, which focus on different IDA fact sheets and areas of interest to families and educators. The IDA fact sheets are a great tool in informing families and professionals alike on the journey of dyslexia. As many of you parents and practitioners can probably relate, getting structured literacy instruction for students in need is more often than not a difficult journey for parents, students, and teachers. As a branch, we are honored to bring these informative sessions to you as we work to bring structured literacy to all students in all classrooms, and especially to those who struggle. To support today's session, we have Andrea Pollock, and she's helping to manage the technical aspects of the webinar. And Kris Reilly will be monitoring and adding valuable links and resources into the chat. During the session, please use the chat to respond to prompts from the presenters. Please save your questions for the end of our webinar, where we will have a 20-minute question and answer facilitated by Kris and Andrea, and we're going to have some discussion too throughout the webinar. Please note that certificates of attendance are not issued for these free Read for Parent webinars. And today's webinar and handouts will be posted on our website within the next week. So we'd like you to please consider joining our branch and inviting your friends and colleagues. There are many advantages, including connecting with our community, staying informed, and we have great deals like IDA TV and opportunities for expanding your network. So please consider joining. There are a variety of membership levels, and you can look these levels over, and I'm sure you'll find one that will suit your needs. Our branch is engaged in a number of activities, including Read for Parents. We also have Read for Professionals, and our upcoming, so we also have our Wilson collaboration, usually twice a year, where people can attend Wilson webinars for some free of charge. We give out scholarships for that. We'll have our annual conference in March this year. And we have our newsletters that come out between 2 and 4 times a year. We also offer different scholarships for our webinars. And we work collaboratively with the Reading League, the New Hampshire chapter, and soon to have the collaboration with the Reading League of Maine. So it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this evening, Kris Reilly and Andrea Pollock. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, I'm Kris Reilly.
And I'm Andrea Pollock. I'm just getting our PowerPoint loaded up.
And just so you know, our goal this evening is to sort of make this a dialogue. It's going to look like a dialogue between Andrea and I, because the two of us will talk special education and basically structured literacy for as long as you'd let us. And then if you have questions or concerns, please put them in chat, and we will try to look at them at the same time. So this is kind of an interesting way to do a podcast without it being a podcast, but we both have been special educators for a long time. And so we understand the ins and outs or how we get bogged down in the language and the acronyms and the mnemonics and, what do all the pieces mean? So this is just a sort of IEP Basics 101, or, just dipping your toes into what are the pieces. So when you go to those meetings and you're like, I thought it was great, but then I left there and I was a little confused. We're here to help.
I almost got this, guys. My computer on my one computer froze, so I'm switching to the other. So hold on one second. Never fails.
All right, so tonight, just so you know, our agenda is we're going to talk obviously a little bit about ourselves. I am Kris Reilly. I have been a special educator and a teacher here in, can't believe I'm going to say this, in New Hampshire for over 25 years. I'm currently working as a reading writing specialist, but I've been a special educator for like 18 years. And I am certified in special education, early childhood special education, learning disabilities, reading writing specialist, early childhood education, ad infinitum, because I like to go to school and I like to learn, and let's, anything to make it easier or to make it better for our students, because that's the goal, is to make it better for our students.
Oh no, Kris, this isn't good.
That's okay. Do you want me to share my screen?
Wait, hold on one second. It's because this is my other school computer, so everything's just stuck. I might have to have you do it until I can unfreeze it. Thank you.
Not a problem. All right.
I apologize, everyone. I had this all set up and here we are.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Do I share my screen and then go to slideshow, or slideshow first?
I usually share my screen and then go to slideshow.
No, I'm going to share my screen. And
I'm
then I'm
just
on slideshow. There we go. Oh, good. What I don't like, I don't know, you probably all remember from Zoom, when you can't see people's faces, then you feel like you're just talking to a blank room. It's very stressful. So our agenda tonight is basically talking about who we are. So I talked a little bit about myself. We're going to talk about an overview, very broad overview of the special education process. Then the next question is, what is an IEP anyway? Because, if you're a family member, you're like, you think I need to get an IEP, or I have one, but then what is it? And what does that even stand for? What are the components of the plan? We're going to just sort of like a little tiptoe dive into each one of those, and then questions and answers, and then we have resources. The other thing we're doing is we're putting together a Google Doc that we will share. It will go up onto our website with links to things. So this presentation, along with links that we talk about in this presentation, will be up on our website within 7 days. Kind of give us 7 days to get it up there.
I was to say too, when I can get this other one up and running, I'll be able to post stuff as we're kind of talking back and forth once the resources do come up that we discuss. So.
Right. I can go to the
Awesome.
page. All right. So Andrea, talk about yourself.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry about my little snafu in the beginning. Of course, your technology, it's all set and ready to go. And then when you go to use it, of course, your computer dies or something freezes, and that's where we're at. But either way, so part of IDA-NNEA, I'm one of the tech gurus. But then on the side, outside of IDA-NNEA, I am an Orton Gillingham teacher trainer through the Children's Dyslexia Center of Nashua. On top of that, I currently work as a reading specialist in one of the New Hampshire public schools. I have my reading specialist certification, my elementary ed K through 8, as well as a special education teacher background. And that was my role for many years, as being a special education teacher, and specifically working with students with reading disabilities. So I know that when Kris and I kind of get the feedback from various Read for Parents sessions, one always comes up regarding like information about the IEP, questions on goal writing, what should we be looking for our students? And so we figured this was a good time, now that the school year is underway, to kind of go through just the basics to figure out what information you need and how we can be of support to you.
Absolutely. And then I was sort of talking at work today a little bit about this having and your best resource, I mean, if you're already involved in the process, your best resource is your case manager. Like at your school, your case manager is your person. That's your go-to person. So if you have questions, you ask them. Having done it for many, many, many years, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to help families shepherd them through this process and have their students get to know me. And then eventually, as I would always make jokes, it's like eventually if, they were discharged and they just were flying high, they would pass me in the hallway and give me the head bobble. They'd be like, I know you. I'm like, I'm not going to talk to you anymore because we're done. However, it was like, I'll acknowledge your existence with the head bobble. And I was like, I'm so proud, because that's the whole goal, is that off they go. They're free. They fly, baby, fly. So, all right. So, overview of special education process. Did you want to jump in, Andrew, or do you want me to talk?
So I could start off a little bit if you want. That'd be great. As I'm getting all this up.
Okay.
So to start off, one of the biggest things is as a parent or whether you're a teacher, either one, if you're a teacher and you have a concern about some of your students, usually you have a team at school. We have what's called like SST, and we meet with a team of teachers to kind of discuss concerns that we have about students that we may run into and say, hey, I've noticed this. Has anyone else? What can we do to try to support? So that's kind of as a teacher, their first line of defense is what can I do next to see if there's any other way I can help? And sometimes we are able as a teacher to say, oh, let me try this, small modification I can do in my class, whether it be, you know, putting stuff up on the board along with a handout, writing steps down. Some of those small pieces really are helpful to a lot of students. Other students, however, may have more difficulty that they're seeing in math or in reading or in writing. And we may try some different things, or a lot of schools also have tiered instruction. So for example, like a Title I type program, students will be able to receive supports and just kind of get that extra boost. I'm not sure if parents, if you want to feel free to jump in as the attendees tonight, if you kind of ever heard of that for your schools. I know when I worked in the elementary setting, we had our core curriculum, and then students who needed a little bit of extra help for reading or math were able to get that kind of tier 2 support. And a lot of times they received it for a couple months and they got exactly what they needed because there was a skill or two that they had trouble with. Obviously, if things are still difficult, as a parent, one thing that you should know is at any time, if you feel that there is a bigger concern you have, reach out to your child's classroom teacher. If you feel that, I feel like there's something more. I mean, let's be real. We have like that gut instinct as a parent, right? I'm a new mom, I guess I'd say. My little guy's almost a year old. And of course, being a teacher, I'm like, he hasn't said certain sounds yet, and I'm panicking. And then it's like, oh, never mind. The next week he's fine. But if you see for your students kind of like a trend that, they're really having trouble with math, math still comes really hard for them. They had trouble with addition and subtraction. Now they're in multiplication, they're floundering. Let's say it's been a problem for over a year or more. That's when you want to talk to your team and say, hey, is there anything else going on? This is what I'm concerned about. If you suspect that your child may have a disability of any way, shape, or form, talking to your team and requesting a meeting is kind of like your first line. You'll be able to meet with your team of teachers and they'll say, hey, we're actually seeing this too. Or they may say, no, we've seen this progress. Here's our data to show this. And they can kind of also help decrease your worry at that point in time. Anything you want to add to that, like little synopsis, Kris?
Well, and honestly, what you're hearing, so you might hear different language. So like you hear RTI, which is response to intervention, or you might hear MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. Again, those are regular ed initiatives. And the whole idea is trying to avoid the wait to fail approach. So if a student needs help, so if Kris is really struggling with the alphabetic principle, I'm in first grade and I'm really struggling, there are, like we talked about, tiered systems, and that there might be a reading specialist or there might be some kind of interventionist that could pull Kris to teach me that, B says B. And then when you put it together with A, B and A make ba, and then you put the t, bat, and you might teach me how to basically blend and segment consonant, vowel, consonant words kind of thing. In what multi-tiered system supports are, as well as response to intervention, is basically that dosage of support needed to see if I'm going to respond to what's happening. Like, so, like we talked about data, we'll keep collecting all that data to say, well, is Kris getting what she needs? Is Kris showing an upward trajectory? Is she okay now so that she can do everything in like the tier 1/core curriculum regular ed? If not, then even the school may come back and say, you know what? We've tried all these things and Kris doesn't seem to be getting it. Maybe it could be a referral to special education process. Let's figure out what's going on. Why isn't she? We've tried all these things for 50 intervention sessions in 6 weeks, and she just doesn't seem to be picking it up. That's when you might go forward to a disposition or referral meeting. And so that's when, like, pretty much anyone, parents can do it, guardians can do it, teachers can do it. Basically, you're reaching out to your special education team saying, hey, we want to look a little closer. We want to find out what's going on. So, and that's when the team gets together and they determine whether or not they need more data. So you'll find out they might decide to do an evaluation. Just so you know, Andrea, I know people raise their hands and are in chat, but when I click, it switches our slides. So I can't help those people right now. I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
Okay. So once we get together, so once the team meets and has that conversation, and that's, they call it, basically you're disposing of the referral. Basically, are you going to go ahead and do an evaluation? Or do you have all the information you need? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? You might need, you might already have everything you need. Let me just click there. And then, so just so you know, everything is federally mandated in terms of timelines. So if you decide to conduct evaluations, you have 60 days. The team has 60 days to actually conduct the evaluations, which would be discussed at the meeting. So as a family member, you will know exactly what we're going to do. So for example, if you came to see me and you'd be like, okay, Kris, Reilly, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to know about their phonological processing. I'm all big into like the base level foundational skills of reading. I want to do this thing called a C-Talk. And you're like, okay, more acronyms. Okay, Kris. Like, no,
More
it's the comprehensive test of phonological processing, second edition. And otherwise known as my first graders will tell you, word games. Say cowboy without cow, say Batman without man. The students think it's fun, they think it's great, but we as adults get lots of information from it, and we understand what's going on and how human beings process. So it's wonderful, great information. So within 60 days of parental approval, we'll get back together as a team and we'll review those evaluations as a team and say, is there something there? Might they need some specialized instruction to access the general education curriculum? Or maybe not. Maybe there's even more going on and we don't know. But that's where that review evaluations as a team actually happens. And it has to happen within those 60 days. Oops.
I got you, Kris. We're good. We're good.
Were you able to get in my
We're
right,
all
but the screen went away. Oh, okay. The screen is up and I just can't see it.
on your end or my end?
Like I said, I don't see the presentation anymore.
Oh, so you shouldn't, because I just started screen sharing on my end for you.
There we go. Oh, good. Okay. Good. So thanks, because I don't see it anymore. So I wasn't sure. Sorry about that, team.
All right, I tried to be stealthy and then it just didn't work.
Okay. All right. I'm going to see. So basically, when you're actually at the special education review meeting, you're having that conversation of whether or not you're determining eligibility for special education. All of this is so long to get to the point where if your child has been determined eligible for the special education process within 30 days, the team has to create, and you're as a family member, you're it. It's important. You know your child the best. Like, you're the first teacher. All those things that we know. You're major part of the team. As a team, we have to come together and create the IEP, Individual Education Plan. As I have older students at some points, and I will remember, it's all about you. And I really do mean that. It really is all about you. I want to know, like, what are you really good at? What are you fabulous at? What are your things? And then my job as your special educator, as your reading specialist, is I'm going to work on the stuff that's hard. That's my job. That's what I do. So anything else you can think of, Andrea, to talk about right there?
So the only thing I want to mention too, Kris, is that again, once you kind of go through this whole process, you're going to have that 1-point person for you. So anytime that you have a question, you have a comment, concern, you're not sure of something, that's the person you want to go to, is that special ed case manager that your student is kind of working directly with. They're going to know kind of the whole IEP with your student best. They're going to meet with your student as well for the most part. And I think that that's kind of like your best point person. Anytime you do send them a message, always CC a teacher on it as well if it has to do with class content. Just because sometimes it's really hard when, if you email, for example, me, the case manager, and then I'm like, oh, this is about ELA. I have to go find out from ELA now. So it ends up being a multi-step process. But if you kind of make sure we're all on it, that helps a little bit with like, oh, clearing up any miscommunications or being able to answer your questions faster. And Kris, we did have one question posed first. It says, is it true teachers are told not to share concern for 2 years? And I've never really heard of that before specifically. I've never been told not to share concerns about my students. I will say that when we do have a concern about a student, there's a specific team, like that SST team, for example, that we bring them up to and discuss.
Roger, okay?
Pretty good.
All right. So, and it's so fun that you have a SST
Got
more.
you.
That's probably student study team, right? Is that your student study?
Yes.
Team? Okay. In my former districts, I had a ooh, look at there. Sorry about that. Student study team. Now in my district, we have CST, which is child study team. Either way, and that's exactly what happens is when we have concerns about even children, and it again, it doesn't have to be academic, it doesn't have to be dyslexia, it doesn't have to be reading. We just happen to do that here. But we get together as a team and dig deeper and say, huh, why is Kris Reilly acting this way? And it could be that Kris Reilly's, grandma moved into her house and Kris Reilly had to sleep in a different room. And that might be why, but no one knows that until we all get together and have that conversation, like, it turns out that Kris Reilly actually speaks other languages and isn't so great at English yet.
Yeah.
And it's, that may not be my first language, even though I think I have it, maybe not so much. So yeah, I mean, I might be a multilingual. I wish I was a multilingual learner, but it might be that. So these are the things that our teams always have to get together and communicate. And then you'll probably find for your own children too, is it's great when the children find out that we do talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're always like,
All
oh,
of
you're talking to my family. I promise you, we're talking to your family. Yep,
Yep.
mommy, daddies, and nanas, and papas, and grandpas, they're all really proud of you too, and we are too, and we're all here to help you be the best you. So it's pretty cool. So once we agree to have, we determine eligibility, and there are basically 13 categories based on the federal legislation. And then there's also developmental delay, just so you know, that is from the time you're 3 years old before your 10th birthday. It's this sort of catch-all place. So it's like, do you have a cognitive or a communication or a motor kind of challenge? And they're not quite sure how to parse it out yet. So it might not be a specific learning disability in like reading or math, but it's like, there's something going on. You may find, I know when I did early childhood special education, we had a lot of identifications of developmental delay going, there's something going on there. We just don't know what. So so those are the categories. Then we determine, basically we draft up that individual education plan. Then we have to determine where those services are going to take place. So that's determination of placement. And then critical piece, just so as you always know, monitor it. Like, how do we know if we've achieved it if we're not measuring along the way? Like, we need to set, basically you're setting your goal. How are you going to get there? Well, we need to monitor. So you'll probably see lots of data. Being a data nerd, Andrea's a data nerd too. We like data. So therefore we can always tell you where your student is in a specific skill, and whether we're achieving it or not. What do we need to do differently so that we could get there in the time frame?
And just so you know, in terms of ongoing monitoring and all that data that you're going to get, as a parent, once your student is on an individualized education plan, either quarterly or every trimester, you will receive a report based on all of the goals your student has and the progress that they're showing towards them. So you're still kept in the loop. You can, again, email your special education team at any point and ask them how your student's doing to provide you with numbers if you need them, or if you're questioning where their progress lies, you're welcome to do that as well. But there's always a quarterly, or I'm middle school, we do trimesters, but send out to kind of show your progress at that point in time. Okay, good.
All right.
This is a very beautiful graphic that Kris created.
Okay, because I can't see, I don't know where we are. So just so you know.
Oh, you can't see the screen at all? Am I not sharing?
I like I said, I don't know what graphic we're on, so I can't, I apologize.
Oh, funny. Here, do you want me to stop sharing?
No, I mean, it's if everyone, I don't know, maybe if Susan's there, she can tell us, because I can't see I don't know where we're at.
Oh, funny. Here, let me stop.
Yeah, I can see the graphics.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So, okay, great. All right. So yes, so
sorry.
nope, that's fine. You guys can tell me where we're at and we'll go for it. So that graphic that you're seeing there is basically just the steps in the process, very abbreviated with the timelines sort of built in. So be able to see that. But then there's also the link. The Parent Information Center is an amazing organization here in New Hampshire. There's the Maine Federation out in Maine. And then, see, Susan, you can help us. What is the name of the fabulous one? I know Stern Center is wonderful in Vermont, but basically they have these great organizations that help families navigate the special education process.
I think it's the Vermont Family Network.
That's it, Vermont Family Network. These fabulous nonprofit organizations are super, super helpful at helping families sort of navigate the whole process. So definitely reach out to them. They have amazing websites and also have amazing basically people like volunteers and employees who just that's their passion to help you kind of figure out this process because it's complicated and then it's stressful. So there's all those wonderful but not wonderful things going on. So, try to reach out to people. No one has to do this alone, that kind of thing. So, all right. So tonight's topic is actually truly just the IEP itself.
Yes.
All right, so tonight's topic is the IEP itself. And IEP, the P is basically plan. So I individualize, meaning, as I tell my students, all about you. Education, it's all about their education specifically. And P is just plan. That's the long and the short of it. It's a plan. It's a working document. I always, I don't know, Andrea, you may do the same thing, especially with families. I'm always saying it's as much as like we're all like, oh, paper. No, it's just paper. So therefore, like we create a draft and you go, oh, I don't like this. That's okay. Goes in the recycle bin, we shred it and we write more because it's a draft. The cool part is like, we create this plan. Students do amazing. Woohoo, fabulous. You know what? We can always work on different goals. We can edit.
Exactly.
It's so I know some, and I know my own background history too was like, I wanted it to be perfect. But you know what? It can't be perfect because the whole point is it's a working document and it's constantly evolving because your students are actually mastering and achieving those goals. So like the good news is like, okay, I get to change it again because you've done great. So that's the cool thing. So working document. It's a working document.
We just had a question pop up is, can we get copies of the slides and like some of those graphics? And of course, we're going to make sure that we have all of this sent out after the webinar takes place. You'll have a recording of the webinar, a copy of our slide deck, and we also have a document with links and special images, things like that. So we'll make sure you get all of that once this is over, and we'll also have it posted on our website. So one of the things too about the IEP plan, which I love calling it a plan, is that it's the student's learning profile. It has all of their strengths as well. It's not just things that need to be worked on. It's really important that you also identify those really strong points of that student. So for example, if your student loves history and science, but struggles with math, you want to kind of hit upon those history and science pieces because that's what makes them feel good. If you're just hammering them with the things that they struggle with, that's tough. But in the classroom, if you're like, hey, I know reading's hard for you, but you love learning about the American Revolution, let's look at this passage, and you're going to engage them that much more. So making sure that their strengths are truly outlined really makes a difference in accessing their needs.
Right. Honestly, and you'll see when we get into the plan, because it talks about this thing called present level of performance. And it really starts with what are the student strengths? And the whole idea is to do things from a strengths-based approach. So if your student, again, you're Kris Reilly and you are really, really struggling at, basic foundational reading skills, but you're fabulous in art. No, I'm not. But if you were, if you're fabulous in art, we would use art basically as the way to keep me motivated to learn, like, that C says K kind of thing. And it really does help and it really works well. So most plans, many of the plans, you'll see all those positives coming up right away. Because again, you want people to feel really good about themselves and to be motivated.
Awesome.
All right.
For our next slide, we're looking at the New Hampshire Department of Ed resources. So one of the first things that you're going to get as a parent when going through this whole special education process is called the New Hampshire Education Procedural Safeguards. And every meeting that you have, they're going to double check that you have them. And they're also going to make you sign off that you've received them. It's super important. It's like your parent handbook of how to go through this process and what to expect. And it informs you of all of your rights. So if there's something that you disagree with, or if timelines aren't being met, that has all that information for you, and how to kind of, for example, if things aren't being met, for example, and you need to go through a different process to get your needs or your child's needs met, it explains in there the process that you need to take a little bit more in depth. Is that a kind of good way to put that, Kris?
It is, right. It's honestly, it's a great document. It's not very like teacher friendly or parent friendly, but it has all the rules and regulations in there and all the timelines that have to be met. And then again, as I have always shared with families, any questions, you reach out to your case manager. She or he is the person who will help kind of like guide you through this process. So they're really fabulous at that. All right, so the next one, right, is what an IEP looks like.
The ins and outs of your plan.
All right, so basically, these are all the different sections in a plan. You've got your present level of performance, and you'll see in your plan, depending on what state you come from, they're all sort of a different formatted a little bit differently, but these are the basic overviews. So you've got present level performance, consideration of special factors, then you've got a transition plan, especially if you're age, I think it's 14, right? 14 and older.
Yeah, if once that student's kind of heading off into high school is when you look at that transitional year, that transitional planning moving forward.
Nice. Then we always sometimes talk about it as like the meat of the plan, which is your measurable annual goals. And again, they're annual. So at a minimum, you'll be meeting with your team to determine what the next goal is. So that's kind of what happens annually. Then we talk about state and district-wide accommodations, any kind of accommodations or modifications to their general education program, your justification of participation. Why are they doing this? Why do they have to do this? Extended year plan, doesn't necessarily have to be summer, but extending the plan itself. The service grid, which basically spells out what services they're going to receive, when they're going to receive them, how long they're going to happen, who's going to do it, who's overseeing it, all that happens. And then placement.
Yep.
So
Nice.
those are the different components of an actual individual education plan.
Okay. And this document, so a lot of times it's super large. It can be really daunting. That's why we're going to take our time. We're going to go through each of these areas to kind of explain what their purpose is, what you should be looking for. So you know that when it comes to either writing your own IEP or looking at one of a student, you kind of know the purpose of each of these sections and what should be in there. All right. Present level of performance. So in the front and the start of your IEP, you're going to start off just like we were talking about on the strengths. So talk about all those strengths that your student has, things that they enjoy, even like testing strengths. So for example, all those educational evaluations that came out, maybe there was a real strength in solving mathematical equations. Maybe there's a strength in their processing speed. Those are also going to be identified in that strengths section as well, because it's really important for teachers to know some of that. The next part are their academic needs. So with the strengths, now we're going to outline those specific areas they need their support in. The academic needs are going to look at, it could be writing, it could be reading, spelling, anything specific within those realms that you need to dive in a little bit deeper. So if I say, oh, so-and-so struggles in reading, that's not really specific enough. We want to go a little bit deeper into that. They may struggle with the phonological layer of language and kind of blending and segmenting our words. That'll give us more information. If it's math, we don't want to just say they struggle in math. This section is going to tell us they struggle with addition and subtraction of multi-step problems or multi-digit problems, for example, but they could be successful at something else. The next section you're going to look at are developmental needs. So your developmental needs are, I'm trying to think, things that, you know, if I have a middle school student that they're not necessarily doing at that point in time. Is that a good way to put that, Kris? Kind of, sort of? Or what they do developmentally to be successful?
Right. I mean, and I know, for example, like, we'll use Kris, Kris Reilly. Kris Reilly might need some support with some organizational skills, like
Mhm.
developmentally. I'm still not able to like walk into my classroom, get rid of my backpack, get rid of my jacket, hang them up, make it to my desk. I can't do that process yet. So developmentally, I might need a little bit of support. I don't necessarily need functional support in like my toileting or dressing or eating or behavior management. What I might need is just maybe a checklist to help me figure out like, okay, now that I've made it off the bus and I've made it to my classroom, maybe I could use some support on learning different routines so that I can actually remember to like take off my backpack or you'll probably hear like, I don't have any homework or I don't have my folder. Well, no, it's in the backpack. And maybe Kris needs help learning how to unzip her backpack, take out the folder and pass it into wherever the educator probably has some kind of bin because they usually do to put them in. But I might need some help with that. And I might need some practice with that until I finally get that. So that kind of information might show up in a developmental section as well. Does that make sense?
I think so. And actually, a question is posed on that. Does developmental needs mirror executive functions?
I don't think so. I don't think, I mean, I've seen a bunch of different things there. I was just trying to think of something like, and then I was like, okay, let's talk about Kris and her, her organizational issues, Um,
Right.
sometimes you will have even seen like that might have shown up like under accommodations too. So it's like you'll see that in that place too, because there's a place for accommodations as well. Um, so um, yeah, no. And then the other section you'd see would be evaluation results and all the evaluations that were probably either conducted, possibly outside of your school district, if you went through a school district and you brought them to the school district to take a look at that. And then the evaluations that were created or done, and then you came up with this determination of eligibility. All that information will be in this plan. The thing to know about these plans is they travel. So like, if you are in a school district in New Hampshire, but then you're going to move to Hawaii, that plan is going to go with you. And therefore that team in Hawaii would be able to look at it and go, oh, Kris Reilly, she administered a CTOP, that comprehensive test of phonological processing, and this is how the student did. And they would have that information. So that's the nice part is it's a portable document.
Mhm.
So I mean, not saying that other districts might not want more information in a different way, kind of thing, but your information can go from place to place. It's not like you need to start all over again, which is nice. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think the biggest thing too is I know we've gotten IEPs, for example, from Massachusetts or even other districts in New Hampshire. And as we go through our presentation tonight, we'll kind of have snippets of the more common one that you see in our state, using the called NESIS, it's what we call it. But the education system, the IEP section that they develop in that webpage that prints out for us, we put in all the information. When you transport or Massachusetts is a great example because theirs looks completely different than ours, but it has all the same information just in a different layout. So that's why it's a great portable document because it can go anywhere and they'll have the information they need to kind of put it into their formatting system.
And then, as you know, I mean, as we want to share with people, it's like, parents and guardians, you're so important in this process. So there is a piece in the actual plan itself for parental concerns. And typically school districts will send home some kind of document saying, what are your concerns? And what I know what we've done, and this is just very, very personal, is like parents will send us information and we literally will type it into the document. So it will be a matter of record. So it's there. So if you said, my mom said, Kris Reilly is really, really struggling with reading, simple words. Like she can't, we read The Cat in the Hat and then 10 minutes later, she still couldn't remember it. It's like, I'm really concerned about her and I really want her to receive the help she needs. If that's what like my mom wrote, that would be written in the document. So it's just so people understand that you're a critical part of the team and we want everyone to know that, everything we're together. We work together collaboratively to meet the needs of the student.
right. So this next one is actually the first image kind of our document that you'll see that I was just mentioning. The section that we just talked about, the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, goes through each of those. So the first top one is our students' strengths. Then it goes the academic needs, developmental needs, and functional needs. This is the layout of most of the IEPs that you'll see within our state using that same program. I don't want to call it a program. What's the Nessus is like the
Yeah, well, it's basically an application that is
There we go.
provided to, it's an application provided to districts in New Hampshire. From I think it's still owned by PC Group, PCG, and it's offered to districts. Basically, I think it used to be free of charge. I don't know if it is anymore, but so don't quote me on that. All I know is it's the system that if a student is identified in need of special ed services, we actually have to like type the information into this system, and it prints out the documents for us. So it's all maintained on servers away from like a school district itself.
That's what I was looking for, is application. I'm like, it's not a program. What is that called?
So like, don't quote me on like the free that I don't know. I just
You're
know
good. You're
the system we have to actually enter the information in. It seems like different school districts, definitely different states use different systems.
correct. But for our purposes tonight, we're kind of looking at this one. Again, if your parent concerns, if you notice it's right here in the middle, describe the parent concerns for improving the student's concerns for improving the student's education. And this is where all of your information is going to go when you let your special education team know exactly what you'd like to say. They should also make sure that before your meeting and developing the IEP, you should get that statement to them ahead of time. Or you can even at the meeting to kind of say, hey, I'd like to add this into there as well, or send something right after. But we want to make sure that your thoughts are in there. Everything that you want to be said is kind of in there, that you feel is relevant to have in this document for the team, for your visions for your student, and because you know them best. Anything specific there, Kris, you want to go over?
No, I think that's great. I think that makes perfect sense.
Okay. Our next section is called Considerations of Special Factors. There's a resource here, and what I'll do is I'll copy and paste it into our chat for you guys. But the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, so IDEA, has 5 specific factors that the IEP team must consider in the development, review, and revision of every child's IEP. So, in the exact words, it says the discussion below will highlight the importance of these special factors in the student's IEP and in development in the revision of it. The factors are behavior, limited English proficiency, blindness or visual impairment, communication needs or deafness, and assistive technology. So, let's see, we can go through each of them. So consideration of special factors. So in the case of a child whose behavior impedes its learning or that of others, consider the use of positive behavioral interventions and supports or other strategies to address that behavior. So if your student has behaviors that we're looking at or addressing within the IEP, this is one of those boxes that we would check in the special factors section. Okay.
Yep, this page, when I've had many meetings, honestly, it's a list of questions. And really, and then there's drop down boxes that we basically say, yes or no. And if we say yes, like for example, if we said yes about behavior, then the question is, now what? What are we going to do about it? So as a team, we determine what we're going to do. The same thing when we talk about limited English proficiency. We have to consider the languages needs of our students and whether they need other supports. So if you have multilingual learners, which is so exciting, and we do, what kind of supports are going to be provided for those students? So that happens there. We also talk about whether a student might be blind or visually impaired. Do they need instruction in Braille? And that's all that information kind of happens here in this considerations of special factors page. And then we do the same thing for communication needs. I want to know if the student is deaf or hard of hearing, or do they have a language and communication needs? I know many students, might have received speech and language related services, and you may have this checkbox be, yes, there is a communication need. And then the question was, well, again, what are we going to do about it? There might be actual goals, objectives, benchmarks, and related, related service delivery of a speech and language service. But this is kind of that first step in. Do they need this service? Yes. Okay. What are you going to do about it? So that's kind of what happens here. Then we have to consider whether or not a student might need assistive technology. And if so, if we do, what are they going to need? Are they going to need speech to text? They're going to need text to speech? Are they going to need co-writer? What are we going to need? That kind of thing. So any other things that you can think of that happen here? Or we didn't get to the medical and sensory piece yet.
Which, I don't know if that's listed on here, the medical and sensory.
Yeah, no, and then there's the question about, does the student have any medical, sensory, or physical impairments? And this will be the section where it might be, oh, Kris, Kris has a diagnosis of XYZ. This information would go there. And then again, just because I have this diagnosis, what does this child need? What does Kris need to make sure that I can access the general education curriculum? Because the whole goal is so that I can, perform well and, achieve and meet the expectations of a general education environment. How am I going to get the access to that?
I'll say, Kris, I know for me, some of the common ones I see are like, Kris has a medical diagnosis of ADHD or autism. Those would typically be listed there.
Mhm.
Are there any others that you've seen that come to mind?
Way back when, and I say the dark ages, my own child, we has had some medical issues with like celiac disease. So before they moved into like health plans, there was like dietary things there too. But now, I would say in the last 10 years, it seems to be related to more of like a health plan. But way back when, in the very dark ages, some of the medical things are related to her dietary restrictions were there. On her plan. It was very interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah, it definitely changed over time.
Yeah. I will say too, for that one section as well, when it comes to if there are any medical diagnosis, when we do check off that box in your meeting, one of the things we'll ask is just for an updated doctor's note to add to the file to make sure that it's still relevant. That's the only other piece that we usually look for. Okay. All right. This next fun section, I actually, I can talk about this a little bit first, Kris, if you'd like. So this is our transition plan, which is super exciting, a little bit daunting, especially when your child's going from 8th grade to high school and it's stressful. And, but our transition plan is exactly that. It is a plan looking forward as to what your student may need going into high school or anything post-secondary, so after high school. So for example, my 8th graders, one of the first things is they need to be invited to their IEP meetings. So they have the opportunity to attend. They can sit through the whole IEP process, learn what their plan's about. They get asked questions and they can kind of talk about, they're at that age too, where they can discuss, yeah, like this is really hard for me, but I feel like this is getting better, or I really need this accommodation because of X, Y, and Z. So they're able to advocate for themselves a little bit more by this age. And it's really important that they are invited to the IEP meeting. And they complete a student questionnaire at this point in time. And what it does is it just looks at, what are some goals that they have for their future? Maybe they want to be a hairstylist. Maybe they want to go on and be a politician. Maybe they would like to take courses because they want to be like a public speaker and they want to take communication type classes. So that outlines or allows us to kind of look at some of their interests moving forward to help gear their courses of study. I can think of some students I had last year who were really into sports and sports medicine. And they were like, yeah, like I'd really love to continue, soccer in high school and maybe consider like learning more about sports in college. Okay, great. What are some things that we can do since you love soccer so much? And that was, looking at sports medicine, maybe doing physical therapy, things like that. And then with that, we're able to kind of look at their courses of study and see what we can do in their high school careers to kind of help get them to that point. So this bottom section, it's a secondary transition courses of study. The biggest thing to know is that this section is not end all be all. Classes listed here, it's a thought, it's a plan. We're going to list this out and it can change at any time. I had 8th graders who said, yeah, I want to take world geography in 10th grade. And now they're in 10th grade and they want nothing to do with world geography. They'd rather take their automotive elective. And that's what this is for. Maybe they decided they don't want to go the route that they originally started with, and now they want to take a different path. And this will be adjusted each time you have your meeting. The projected courses are adjusted. And as we know, students, adults, we decide over time, hey, yeah, like this, I would love to do this in, my future career. And then a year later, you're like, nah, I don't want to do that anymore. Our students are the same way. So their projected courses of study just look at things that they might be interested in taking. For some of my students with, for example, reading that need additional reading supports, we'll list specific classes in there for high school that are projected to kind of help meet their goals as well. But that's kind of the big gist of this section. Anything in particular, Kris, you want to add?
No, and honestly, we're relying a lot on Andrea for this because most of my career has been in basically birth through like 6th to 8th grade. After 8th grade, I usually tutor students outside who are like, in high school. So I don't get to see these transition plans much. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah. And I will say some other parts of it too, like this little box section at the top. In one of my previous settings, I know that we did a lot with post-secondary independent living goals where they would say, in the future, like, I don't think that I want to live on a college campus. I'd rather live at home and commute. And we were able to add that in there. Or they could say that eventually that they would like to get their own apartment, but they might need some steps and help getting to that point. I've also seen listed here students who have current counseling services that have decided, yeah, I really think I would like to continue those after high school ends. So those are all pieces put in there that we're looking forward and looking out, figuring, we want to make sure that we set the student up for success. These are some things we've discussed that we want to make sure are in place before they graduate.
That's fabulous. I love it.
All right.
So,
actually, I should have probably done that. That would have been helpful if I clicked this slide.
it's
It's
okay.
the thing we just talked about. It just gave you more of my bullet notes of what to go off of. We'll keep going. All right. For the section that you guys have all been waiting for, this is the measurable annual goal section. So the goals listed in your student's IEP, they provide an instructional roadmap that identifies the knowledge, skills, or behaviors a student is expected to be able to demonstrate within a year's time. So these are the things that we're adding in for your student saying, hey, you know what? This is a skill that we want your student to achieve in the next year to help them meet future goals. Okay. Goals should allow access to and be connected to the grade level curriculum. That is the biggest thing we want to make sure is that they are created to address specific skill deficits. They're a 1-year progress marker, but they're connected to the grade level curriculum. So, for example, for one of my 7th graders, for example, in math, struggles still with fractions. Well, we're going to still continue to work on fractions, but you're still receiving the grade level curriculum, just getting extra support with this one skill. That's kind of what one of your goals will look like. Or for a reading goal, for a writing goal, for example, in their class, they're writing multi-paragraph essays. Their goal is really specific in saying that they're going to write paragraphs with a topic sentence and a conclusion sentence. So we're working on those minute details to help them achieve the overall in their content areas as well. What do you think, Kris? That sound good?
That's great. Let's go to the next one so we can talk about basically you'll start hearing about SMART goals pretty soon. So just goals, this is sort of that part of the IEP, the individual education plan that you'll see, which talks about you have your goal, whatever it may be, but then the next thing they're going to ask you is, how are you doing right now? Like if your goal is to read, we'll use Kris. Kris reads consonant, vowel, consonant words with 93% accuracy and 4 out of 5 measured opportunities. How am I doing? Right now in December, we might go, not so much. Kris is really good at, vowel consonant words, at, in, op, egg. But I can't put 3 sounds together, but I'm great at 2. That information is going to be in your present level of academic achievement, because again, you'll have that information probably because you have just done evaluations, you've seen what I can do in school, you see what I can do at home. That information goes here. And then how am I doing functionally? Am I hiding? Is my head down? Am I under the table? Am I just refusing? What am I doing? All of that information, or maybe I need lots of encouragement and lots of cheerleading. That information is going to show up under the functional performance too. You're going to be like, yep, with intensive encouragement, Kris Reilly, will possibly, will actually read maybe 4 or 5 words to you. So absolutely, this information is going to show up right there for each actual goal. And then you actually have the goal itself. And then under the goal is basically your roadmap, your signpost, your mile markers to get to, like, think of your goal as your exit ramp. Your mile markers to get to that exit ramp are your short-term objectives and your benchmarks.
Good. All right. Now, the biggest thing with the goals that we write is we want to make sure that they're SMART goals. We want to make sure that they are specific. They are measurable. Are they even achievable or attainable within a year's time? Are they relevant to what the student needs? And are they time bound? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick poll. I have 2 goals. Ooh, let me see if I can do this. Polls. All right, I'm going to pose a quick poll for you guys. There's 2 questions on it, and I want you just to read the 2 questions that are there, the 2 goals, and just determine whether they are a SMART goal or if they're not. All right. So our first goal says, by January 2025, student name will improve his writing to 80% accuracy in 2 out of 3 opportunities as measured every quarter by student work samples. So is this a SMART goal or a measurable SMART goal, or is it not? I'll just wait to get a couple responses in here. Okay. Our second one says, by June 2025, after reading a grade level passage, the student will answer comprehension questions with 80% accuracy or greater in 3 out of 4 opportunities as measured by quizzes. Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for our first goal, it's kind of 50-50, whether it's measurable or not. Interesting. All right. And our second one, we have a 100% consensus that it is measurable. Wow, right down the middle.
All right.
All right, I'm going to end this poll real fast. Good.
Thanks for participating, by the way. We really appreciate it.
That was exciting. Okay. So for both of our first goals, the first goal was kind of 50-50, and I agree. It's not written very well. It is actually missing some information. And our second goal is written much better. It is much more specific. It is still missing one of our criteria, but that is more of your measurable SMART goal, that second one that we were looking at. All right, so looking at SMART goals, let me go on to the next page. Did I switch over? Okay. Okay. So a SMART goal should have a very specific time frame, and all of our goals are written for a year's time. So it should be like by a year from now, by December 2025, which is crazy to even think about a year from now. They should have a condition or a situation which outlines the materials or setting provided to the student in order to demonstrate the knowledge, skills, or behaviors in that goal. So for example, by December 2025, given a grade level passage, that's kind of what they're given or what they need to be successful. I know for some of my students, it would be for like a fluency goal. By December 2025, given a tracking device and an independent level reading fluency passage. Those are 2 things that they need to try to be successful for this goal. Your goal should have your student's name. Just throwing that out there. You'd be surprised how many goals don't have the name. It should always have the student's name. The next thing you're looking at is a clearly defined or observed behavior. So this explains what the student will do. Basically, can you see it? What does it look like? Can you count it? When will you know that you've seen it? And I will post in the chat. Actually, let's see if I can do that right now. I can post in the chat for us a whole document of like observable behavior terms to look for and use. And I'll add that in just a second. The next one is the how well, which kind of sounds funny, but basically how well will the student be expected to perform the task? Is it with 95% accuracy? Are you looking for during a 3-minute time frame? Is it 5 times within a half-hour session? Are you looking for speed, like 65 correct words per minute? Are you looking at, think of like a PT or OT goal, walking a straight line for 8 feet? Or are you looking at just the number of trials, like 8 out of 10 times? Okay. How consistently is out of those, if 3 out of 5 trials, out of so many weekly probes that they're given? And then how often are we to collect data on this monthly, bi-weekly, every session? You know, how often are we looking at this to kind of compile that information? And last but not least, how is it going to be measured? What are you using to measure this goal? Are you using teacher created word lists? Are you using student work samples, which is kind of broad, but that works? Are you using, I'm trying to think of another one, Kris, anything in particular that you use?
Sometimes we'll use screeners like 3 times a year. You mean in addition to, teacher basically observation, teacher checklists. You may, do, basically screeners, like screening inventories multiple times a year to see how have you done? How did you do in the fall? How'd you do in the winter? How'd you do in the spring? You may also look at your universal assessments. How are you doing on those? So you can pull in all of those different diagnostic screeners. You can pull in your universal assessments. And then, sometimes you even might want to do I'd say diagnostic, but you might want to do an actual evaluation, but use your evaluation as a diagnostic. There's all different ways to keep measuring that observable behavior. Because you need to know what you're intervening with. What are you doing? Is it working? Because if it's not working, the whole idea is to change it. Change something to make it work.
And that's why this data is so important, because again, if it's not working, or you're not seeing growth and progress, then the goal needs to be adjusted. Maybe you need something different to help your student get to that point. What's the condition or situation that you're looking at? Maybe it's no longer a small group setting. Maybe you're looking at like a 1-to-1 setting. Maybe instead of just saying reading a fluency passage, maybe they need a fluency passage in 18 or greater font, or maybe it is that tracking device. What other little tools are necessary? I do want to point out, so if you look at our goal example, this is kind of what our whole page looks like on that measurable annual goal section. So you have the present level of academic achievement. So it kind of just tells you exactly where our student Penelope here is in terms of her decoding skills and her overall reading. The functional performance outlines that our friend Penelope here has ADHD, which affects her ability to sit and read for longer than 5 to 10 minutes. That's really important to know, which is why it's listed here. I do want to note, this is not an actual student. This was, this whole example is pulled directly from the DOE, who gives examples on SMART goal writing, measurable annual goals, a training that we just recently did. So I pulled this from them. So this is exactly from their paperwork, which I'll also share with you guys as well. If we take a look, the measurable annual goal should have these 8 specific parts to make sure it's a SMART goal. So let's go through them together. Our first one is by June 2025, which is our time frame. Check. Give an appropriate reading level text. So we can't just give anything in particular. It has to be the right level for the student. That's our condition or situation. Penelope, which is our student, will read 35 words per minute. So that's our clearly defined observable behavior. She's reading, we're counting 35 words, done. With 95% accuracy, there's our how well. How consistently is in 3 out of 4 trials. So out of 4 times, 3 of those has to be or meeting that criteria. We're looking at it being measured weekly and then using running records. So how often and how is it measured? So those are our 8 criteria right in that goal, and we're set. Looking good?
Looking good. Okay.
Any questions on like a goal and what it should look like? Please, please, please post questions in the chat. That's why we're here.
I know I keep peeking just in case.
All right. One quick thing before we do our next poll is I want to talk about measurable annual goal versus your short-term objectives versus benchmarks. So if you notice in our last slide, we had our measurable annual goal, and then we had these 4 benchmarks listed underneath. Okay. And what that is your goal is, remember, that year-long expectation of what you want your student to achieve. And the things underneath are broken down either in short-term objectives, which are skills described in the annual goal, which are like those smaller components we're looking to meet. Or you have benchmarks, which are the progress that your child's going to make within specific segments of the year. So it could say, you know, over the course of the year, starting in December, from December now to December 2025, oh, you know what? By February 2025, she's going to be reading 30 correct words per minute. By June, we're going to be looking at about 40. And then by next fall, so you're kind of breaking that down into smaller pieces to kind of monitor that progress over time. Anything you want to add to that, Kris?
No, I always think of it in my head. I always think about it as like exercising. Like, I really wanted to, I always wanted to run a marathon. Still not there yet. So, but I started with my 5Ks, then I got to my 10Ks, then I got to my half. Still haven't done the marathon yet. But like in my head, those are basically my benchmarks along the way. And it's like, and then kind of like, all right, now that you've done your 5K, well, now I want to do my 5K in 30 minutes. I don't want to do my 5K in 40 minutes. So, you have those little, again, like mile guideposts along the way, milestones along the way. And that
was
really,
an analogy
yeah.
that we came up with last night. We were talking about this last night and we're like, what's a good analogy for this? And what's it like the car driving?
Right. It's like, think about where, you want to get to, grandma's house or wherever for the holidays or Christmas or Hanukkah or, your holiday. And so, but all right, you need to get to like exit 72, but you're at, 68.2, 68.4, 68, and you're in lots of traffic, but you're getting closer the whole way when they're all saying, are we there yet? So, but, but yeah, that's just kind of think about them as benchmarks along the way. Objectives typically, when I know I've written them, it's all about trying to get to like a specific skill. So again, you want me to be able to read single syllable, closed syllable words, maybe with digraphs, going totally crazy now. But remember, I'm really just at 2 sounds. Then I'm going to want 3 sounds. And then eventually you're going to need to teach me all the different digraphs. So like all the H brothers, basically the SH and the CH, and then maybe the CK, and maybe then get crazy and do a TCH. But those might be the objectives along the way to get me to be able to read, 3 sound words with digraphs. So those would be your objectives to get there.
Perfect. And I just found, where did it go? This is what happens when I'm trying to do 2 things at once. I just found my document that I wanted to upload to your chat, which is the menu of observable terms. And I just put that in the chat for everyone to see, so that way you guys have it, so I don't forget. And again, that was directly provided by the DOE, the New Hampshire DOE, from a recent training we were just at. So please use that. It's a great resource. All right, moving on. So here's for our next activity. What I'd like to do is I'm going to start another poll for you guys. And this one has a goal that I've written. It doesn't have a specific student's name, just says student. So pretend that's a name there if it's there. And what you're going to do is you're going to go through and you're going to see, okay, well, does it have a time frame listed? Do I have my condition? Basically, you're looking for what information is missing from that goal. Are you able to pinpoint whether this is a clearly written SMART goal? So let me start our first poll. I'm going to launch one. Okay, so it says, given 20 sight words, student will improve spelling by correctly spelling 80% of words given as measured by weekly quizzes. So looking at this first goal, tell me, do I have my time frame listed? Do I have my condition or situation? Is my student name listed? What's my observable behavior? Take a look through that and now click off the boxes that you think are missing from this goal. So I'll give you guys another minute or so to kind of look through this. What information is missing? Will it let you click or no? Ooh. It will. Okay, good. Ooh. Give another second or two to hopefully get some responses. We are definitely missing that date. Nice job. Good. Awesome. All right, we have a couple responses so far. Nice job. So a couple are saying we're missing the condition or situation. Some are saying we're missing the observable behavior. Interesting. Good. How consistently, how much often are measurement tools? All right. I'm going to end the poll for right now. And what I'd like to do is just talk about it for 1 second. So taking a look at, let me pull up my other slide. Donde está? There we go. All right, taking a look at that goal. It looks like we're missing, first of all, the date. So when is this going to be accomplished by? Is this a never ending goal? Who knows? We're missing how or when it's going to be, what the year point is. So basically, when are we looking to measure this by? We're also missing how consistently are we measuring this? Are they only spelling this once? Are they spelling 80% of words multiple times to show mastery? How often is this happening? Some are saying that we're missing the condition or situation. So given 20 sight words would probably be our condition or situation. Now, I would also argue that are they physically given them or to improve spelling? What does that look like? Are they just being orally told them? I agree that that could be written much better. And then our observable behavior, correctly spelling. Kris, what do you think? Would you say that that observable behavior of correctly spelling is adequate?
Well, I mean, we will know obviously if they've correctly spelled those 20 high frequency or slash sight words, but again, because our condition is vague, it's hard to know what we're talking about. I mean, are they going to be the same 20 words? Or are we week to week? Are we changing them?
Yeah.
It's very, it's muddy.
Well, and I also kind of wonder, is this a copying goal where more of like an OT perspective, like they're given 20 sight words and they're copying to show mastery?
Right.
Who knows? So those of you who listed the condition or situation, the observable behavior, you're right, because I'm not exactly sure where this comes from. Granted, the rest of the goal, if we had, present levels, things like that, would give us a little bit more information. But that was fantastic. Nice job, you guys. Let's take a look. I'm going to launch one more just to kind of give us some more practice. So gotta find my tool. There we go. Let's do, should I do that one? Yeah. Okay. All right, I just launched one more. So take a look and see if you can find any missing information from this goal. I hope that you're able to still kind of see like my little checkbox list on the slide. I'll just wait for another second or so to get some responses. Yes, no, maybe so. All right, I see one. We're missing how consistently. Awesome. Good. All right, I'll end it now just so we can kind of move on. But basically that goal by December 2025, given direct systematic instruction, student name will decode 1 and 2 syllable words containing blends, vowels, vowel teams, suffixes with 85% accuracy as measured bi-weekly by teacher created word lists. We are actually missing from this goal how consistently that's going to occur. So nice job, you guys. That was perfect.
That was great.
Spot on. I love it.
I know, me too. I was like, yeah, they've got it. This is fabulous.
The excitement. Don't mind us. We kind of get nerdy over goals and goal writing.
We kind of do.
All right, let's move on. So one of the biggest things that especially when I'm sitting in IEP meetings with my reading goals, one of the biggest things that we end up getting asked are, well, why can't the goal say using Orton Gillingham? Is that happening? And unfortunately, we can't write in an IEP OG or Wilson or ISME or any type of programming or methodology because this is the cross-state or cross-district document. However, because we can't use a specific program title, it's almost like the same as saying like, oh, my student is getting wit and wisdom. We want that written into the goal. And it's like, well, unfortunately, if your student goes to another state and they don't use wit and wisdom, that's not the end all be all. We want them to get specific skills using a certain methodology, right? It's not necessarily the program that you've purchased or whatever you're using. So these are the keywords that you want to look for if you're kind of looking for that Orton Gillingham approach or multisensory reading, basically. So if your child requires reading services, look for the following written in their goal. In that goal, it should say direct or systematic sequential instruction that is explicit or cumulative or multisensory, or it should also just say structured literacy. These key terms are basically the guiding principles of Orton Gillingham, for example, or Wilson. So if you see those terms in there, then you will know that that is the type of instruction that will be implemented.
You probably have heard that, structured literacy is pretty much harmful to no one. It's beneficial to everyone. Not everybody needs maybe the same dosage or intensity, but direct explicit instruction is useful for everyone to learn how to read. So, and then the International Dyslexia Association is obviously a big proponent of structured literacy. So if you actually access their websites, you're going to see lots of amazing infographics on the when, the how, the why. So there's lots of resources available if you're ever looking for that.
Awesome.
See. All right, so the next page, so that's kind of goal. You're going to get to that part about service delivery model, and it's a very overwhelming page. It's like this big table. It's super overwhelming. So what you're going to find on this page is basically the type of service. We're going to talk, and then it's going to talk about which goal that service is related to, because the goals are typically numbered in the document. Who's going to coordinate the title? It might be your special education case manager, it might be your coordinator, could be pretty much anybody. It's the role of a person. Then who's going to provide it? It could be a reading writing specialist. It could be a special educator. Could be a paraeducator. Again, it's the role of the person who's providing it. You're going to talk about the frequency that they're going to receive the services, as well as how much time per that session. Then you're going to talk about when it's going to happen. When's it going to begin? When will it end? And then the location that it's going to happen. Is it going to happen in a special education setting? Is it going to happen in a regular education setting? And then whether or not it's medically necessary, because you probably have seen, if you've done this, a lot of places will what they call blind bill to it's I don't know if it's we call it MSB. I don't know what your organization calls it.
That's what we have MSB as well. X logs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it's basically as I would explain, it's basically we send out our tax dollars, and if there's a way for the money to come back to the district, they'll blind bill if people are eligible. So none of us as case managers, we do not know. We don't have this information, and we're not supposed to have this information. So it happens not with us. Let's see. So type of service, like I said, it could be, it could be reading service, it could be a math service, it could be a related service such as, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy. It could be someone coming in for hearing or basically motor support. So all of these services would show up in the grid. Then, like I said, it'll be attached to like the goal, and it will be just numbers. And then, like we just talked about, who's coordinating it, who's providing it, and then how often it's going to happen. I'm trying to think anything else.
Supplementary aids and supports for personnel. I know supplementary aids, that would be where paraeducator support could be listed. Supports for personnel, sometimes you'll see listed there as like consult to team. That's when we frequently put in just to make sure that we have that built in. So the team meets regarding specific student supports to discuss kind of like where they're at with it. I think those are the main two. Anything else for those, Kris?
No, I think that's it. Someone did have actually about the medical necessary piece again.
Yeah.
I know, and again, I only have this much information. So again, don't quote me. This is just from a personal perspective, not depth of knowledge kind of thing. This is just by 25 years of living it. Um, if a student might have communication needs,
Mhm.
and so therefore we as a case manager, we would click off that the communication need is medically necessary. So a student may receive speech and language services because of a communication disorder. And then we would say that the service was medically necessary. And again, that in terms of the billing part of it, the district basically blind bills. I don't know, it's like, is it MSB? It's an organization. It's got to do with like Medicaid or something. And if the student is eligible, the money kind of comes back to the district. How that works, I truly do not know. So I don't know, Andrea, do you know how that works?
Not entirely. I just know like when you're at an IEP meeting, you'll be asked to sign something for Medicaid billing. So basically, if you are eligible for it and you sign off saying that they could bill for it to receive and recoup some funding, you're just signing off on that in the meeting that, you know, if you don't have it, you're signing off saying that if you did, we'll be able to recoup some costs. Is that the
Right.
best way to put it?
Right. And like I said, don't quote us on this because we don't have any depth of knowledge. This would, if you're super interested in this information, I would seriously reach out to probably your special education, like
Direct.
director, assistant
Yeah.
director in your district, because they will have that information for you. Because I know like I do not have that information.
I would say, as special ed teachers, we don't do with the billing stuff. We just
That's
have you sign the paper and put it with your file.
So, and then there might be supports for personnel. So, if basically a student might have, some kind of support personnel with them, that personnel might actually need some specific technology. Like some people have like iPads they use to do data collection. So, they might have all that information. So that could be included in here too. Again, other students may have equipment that they need. So that information would be in here too.
That like training for that personnel, correct? Yeah.
Right, training, and then the other thing is, like I said, there's the training, and then if you might have outside agencies come and consult with your team. So they might come from outside the district. They might have like hearing or vision, or it used to be way back when of the dark ages called like ATAC would come and give us like tech support. And
Yep.
that information is in the plan so that when everyone knows that the student needs these services and that the entire team will get together multiple times a year, a month, whatever the team decides, to actually go over what the child needs and how they're doing.
Mhm.
So, and again, that's the whole concept behind this. It's a plan. And that way, and it's so that way everyone sees what's gonna happen. So it's kind of cool.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. State and district assessments and accommodations. So this first part were state assessments. So obviously here in New Hampshire, we have the New Hampshire SAS. What will happen is if your child can receive any accommodations on that, some of the frequent ones that we see are like text to speech, speech to text, extended time or separate setting. Those are some accommodations that you're, able to have if you can require them or if they're beneficial. And then district assessments are a little bit different. So these can include like NWEA map testing. Our district uses STAR testing. Those would be listed under here as well, and the same accommodations if they're necessary or applicable. Good. A couple resources here. We'll also make sure those are linked into our handout at the end of all of this.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep. If we go to the next one, we're talking about, and you probably have seen this if you've lived this experience, the differences between accommodations and modifications. Accommodations are basically having you access your general education curriculum and general education programming. You're not changing anything. It's access. So again, Kris might need extra time. I
Mhm.
might need, because I'm a kind of a squirrel, I might need for you to, but I might need to go for a walk maybe after 10 or 12 minutes. You know what I mean? But I can come back and I can do what's there. I just might need some movement mix. I might need a wiggle cushion, that kind of thing. You don't need to give me a separate curriculum. Because I can actually access the curriculum with those little minor accommodations. Sorry about that.
Accommodations, yeah.
Accommodations. I don't need you to change that. Like you were talking about the student who still needs assistance with fractions.
Mhm.
Doesn't need a separate program, just needs assistance learning how to do fractions well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's just graph paper. So
Right.
the accommodation to line up and solve their mathematical equations,
Right.
which, you think sometimes you should be using it, and a lot of times kids just use regular notebook paper, or
Yeah.
they use plain paper, who knows? Or
Right.
you know what? Sometimes they don't even write out their equations. You never know. But that could be an accommodation, is making sure that they have the right tools to be successful.
Right.
Some of the common accommodations that I see for students with reading difficulties could be increased font size on any types of handouts. One thing I've been adding in on that type of accommodation is that either increased font size, or since a lot of our students have one-to-one technology on like Chromebooks, having those documents scanned as a PDF so they can just zoom,
Mm-hmm.
which is huge. Or that also gives them the ability to use, I think it's snap and read, so they can highlight text over that PDF and have it read to them, which is another great tool or accommodation that they could use. um Modifications, very specific. It is modified curriculum or specific changes that are happening to the core curriculum for your student to be successful. Modifications, I don't want to say you don't see them as frequently, Kris, but I feel like that's the best way to put it. We try to accommodate as much as we can. And then once you're modifying or changing the curriculum, that's definitely more of it's a different need.
It's definitely a different need. It's definitely a conversation to have with your team.
Mhm.
If you find out your student might need modifications, because there's so many things we can do to create those accommodations. I know just even our weekly progress monitoring tool that we use, we basically just use the photocopier. We just increase the font size. We just, just to make the text a little bit larger. It makes a big difference. And that, it's amazing what their fluency changes dramatically if the text size is just a little larger.
Mhm.
So
I would say real quick too, before we move on from this one, Kris brought something up to me when we were talking the other night about district-wide accommodation plans, which is something that I feel like a lot of districts are doing now, or some have had them in place for a long time. And go ahead, Kris, you can talk more about it, because I thought this was really intriguing.
in Massachusetts, there's actually a state law for what they require. They require this thing called a district-wide accommodation plan. And these are the accommodations that every student in the entire district is eligible for, should receive if they need it. And so there are certain districts in New Hampshire who have started that process as well. And it's the things that some teachers might say, it's just good teaching. If they need a wiggle seat, they get a wiggle seat. If they
Mhm.
need preferential seating, they can have preferential seating. If, they need some special pencil grip. Okay. So those are the kinds of things that you'll find in there. Extra time, of course. Or, we're going to chunk this, 2-page math test into chunks. We're going to do this part in the morning and we'll do this part in the afternoon. Those are the kinds of things that you'll find in there. If you well, you have this resource too, but if you do like a Google search in Massachusetts, every district in Massachusetts has a district-wide accommodation plan, and you'll see pretty familiar accommodations that are just accessible for everybody. And it's good for all of us to, like, it's the way we all may learn or may need to learn. So
Teaching. Yeah.
yeah, it's good.
Um, Real quick note too. So as a, special education teacher, as a reading writing specialist, one of the things that I do want to make sure that we stress is that accommodation pages in an IEP, if you have a page or 2 pages of accommodations, really take a look at them and see what's truly necessary, or how often do you have to provide this accommodation to a student? Because it's really difficult for teachers, and I and say this generally too, that it's really difficult when there's 2 pages of accommodations and you're trying to remember all of them and implement them and make sure your students getting what they need, but some of them they don't use, some of them don't apply. Some of them are just worded funny and don't really make sense, because it's like, you know, just, I think I just err on the side of caution and make sure that the accommodation is very specific, make sure that it's realistic and that the student actually uses it, and how often do they use it. Does that sound good?
I think that sounds great. I know,
Mhm.
way back when, again, back dark ages, well, as a case manager, I would go visit even all our specialists. So I'd go to art and music and PE and technology and library and media science and say, how often does Kris need this accommodation? And many times they'd be like, she doesn't need it at all. I'm like, well, then we're not going to include it anymore.
Right.
But I may have needed it as a first grader, but maybe as a seventh grader, I don't need that anymore. Let's just get rid of that. Because the nice part is, human beings grow and develop, so you might not need that accommodation anymore. And then the nice part too is if you take a look at the district, if your district has a district-wide accommodation plan, those are eligible, those are for everybody. So that's kind of neat. I mean, and that's the kind of the cool part with our high-tech world too. We have access. Access is available for many, many people now. So that's kind of neat.
Love it.
Should we-
Thank you.
Should we go to summer, extended school? I didn't mean summer.
Extended school year, we're here. All right, so the point of extended school year is to maintain educational gains, reduce potential regression, and then also we can foster further learning opportunities. So this can be achieved by districts typically host ESY in the summer. They also have summer camps that are hosted by the district. However, it doesn't always have to be in the summer. Keep that in mind. It could be before or after school. It could be during vacations. The biggest point is to extend the year for learning.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know. I think we're all more familiar with ESY, just extending that over the summer, because that's like the biggest chunk of time that students miss out on. But depending on your students' needs, I think that there's other options as well. Sometimes it's during a vacation week, or I'm trying to think. I know Kris mentioned the after school. So sometimes after school, they just get like an extra dose of something. Where have you seen it specifically, Kris, or what have you seen?
Well, honestly, I've actually done before school or after school.
Mhm.
We've extended the day.
There you
And
go.
had students come before school or after school, and that has worked. Sometimes we've done just like a school vacation week and run like 3 days during a school vacation week for certain students. And then again, if we have like a 10-week break during the summer, they may come, like 2 weeks, take a week off, 2 more weeks, that kind of thing. And it really is, again, back to that individual, it's individualized, which is pretty exciting.
Mhm.
So
All right.
that's extended school year. Then we get into that justification of non-participation. So what we're trying to find out is, and it's really just, again, kind of like that considerations of special factors page, it's a list of questions. So the first question is, will the student be removed from the general education classroom at any time? Really, again, it's a yes or no. If the answer is yes, you have to explain why. So, for example, if I say that Kris Reilly is, needs to be removed from her general education setting, and you'd be like, well, why? It's like, well, Kris Reilly is still struggling at vowel consonant, and maybe I'm in fourth grade at this point. So if I'm struggling at vowel consonant, you might not want to teach me bat, cat in my fourth grade classroom. You might want to, for many reasons, have me learn that skill somewhere else and then integrate back in, that kind of thing. Whereas, but if I was like in first grade learning at and in, you might want to push in for services because that's more developmentally appropriate at that grade level. So again, you're looking holistically as well at the student to make sure, where's your skill level and where developmentally are we, and what is the, what is the grade level learning? What's the curriculum learning too? So then number 2 asks, will the student participate with their I don't like this word, non-disabled peers in extracurricular and non-academic activities? So the idea is, will, let's choose me, will Kris be working with her other peers? I'm spoiled, so I usually get to say, yes, of course. I want you to be least restrictive environment. I want you to be in your homeschool environment with all your other friends, and you're going to do that. Sometimes you say no, because sometimes there are students who need a more restrictive setting, but in many cases you'd see this would be yes. But if the answer is no, again, one more time, you have to explain why. Then the third question is, will the student be placed for any part of the day outside his or her LEA? LEA is Local Education Authority. Think of that as like your district. And the question is, do they need to go to a different setting in terms of like a different school? Many cases you're going to say no, but in some cases, yes. I have personal family members who go to separate settings. So they would say yes, and then you would explain why. And there's a lot of information behind that, why they would have to go to a different school setting. But in many cases, they would for students who might have a reading challenge, they could get their services, hopefully get their services in their local school environment. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you're good. That's perfect. Whoops, there we go. All right, we're getting towards the end, guys. So at the end of your student's IEP, what you're looking at is the parent response page. So multiple signatures are needed on this. Your LEA rep will be signing off at the top of it. In that middle section, it says parent's response to the proposal for the IEP. So basically you're consenting to the IEP and or educational placement. You can refuse consent, but agree to the educational placement. You can partially consent. You can consent to the IEP, but not the placement. There's tons of options there. You have to read through them, but basically you have options. You might like the IEP and say, this is fantastic, but I don't know if I want my student to get reading services outside the class. And you can kind of refuse that part of it. Basically what you'll want to do though is that you either consent or you don't. If you don't, then you want to make sure that you're refusing consent for specific things within the IEP and stating that below. And then after that, if there is anything that is, you don't consent to, then we have to meet again and reconvene to kind of discuss them and see what changes can be made. All right.
So if we go back to, just so you know, we go back to, if you take a look, it's a working document and it's kind of a conversation. It's a conversation with all the team members of like, how are we going to support this student? So, this document is just, again, documenting what the plan is for the student. And then it's a conversation and we basically write everything down. So, and then again, because it's a working document, it can be changed. So, when the draft is, obviously I can't say typically, many times the draft will go home to family members before the meeting to go over the document. Then at that meeting, there'll be changes made, those kinds of things. That's because again, it's a draft. The whole idea is to like work our way through it. Then the document will sort of hopefully be agreed upon like verbally, and we'll go home to the family members again along with this document called a written prior notice, and that tells you what was decided at that meeting. And family members have 14 days to, again, like this, agree, disagree, I like this but not that, all those conversations. But remember, family members get to make these decisions because you're a critical important piece to this process. So,
I know, Kris, you brought up something really important, which is the written prior notice. Just to reiterate that a little bit more and talk more about it, is that the written prior notice is a standalone document separate from your IEP. And the purpose is that anything regarding proposals for change or setting or services, things like that, are written into this written prior notice for you. It captures the team discussion and proposals. And basically, it's a smaller document for you to look at and say, okay, this is what they want to change, looking at this as well. And then also kind of having that before you make your decision to agree or disagree. Okay.
So words that, I mean, you're going to see, like we've been talking them and we're trying hard to make sure that we parse them out. You might see FAPE. FAPE is free, appropriate public education. That's what that means. LRE, least restrictive environment. The goal is to have the students be with their peers in their, we talk about like tier 1 setting, but in their regular ed setting as much as possible. It will obviously be based on their needs. Some students may need, more restrictive. Some students may be like totally fine. They might just need a little bit of support in something. ESY is that extended school year. LEA is local education authority. So think of your school district. SEA is state education authority. So for us, think New Hampshire or Maine or Vermont. So if there's any questions, great.
Woo, that was a lot. We made it through the whole IEP, everyone.
And I know it's funny, and it's 8:40. We were sorry for going over, but we wanted to make sure that we, covered the pieces. Again, if you have questions, you can send us email. You can reach out to us. This information will go home to the people who've registered, but we will also upload it to our IDA-NNEA website within 7 days, along with a Google Doc that will have some of the links to all the things in this. So yeah, hopefully it has helped. And if you have questions or you see where we need to make tweaks, please let us know. We just wanted to make it a conversation because we know it can be tricky for families as you go through this document, and it's it can be a stressful process, and we want to make it as less stressful as we can.
Thank you so much, both of you. I'm not directly involved in IEPs on a regular basis, so I always learn so much, and I love the timeline and being able to lay it out the way you did. Just made a lot of sense to me. So thank you so much. And our next Read for Professionals is going to be on morphology with our special guest, Dr. Julie Walter. And that's going to be January 15th, 2025 at 7:00 p.m. And I hope that you can join us for that presentation as well. And our next Read for Parents will be by Brenda Peters, and it's entitled Dyslexia and Charting for Success, Linking Psychoeducational Assessment and Reading Science with CADS. And so Brenda's going to present her information to us on February 15th at 7:00 p.m. So another one that I hope you can join us on.
Actually, I'm looking at that. Is it February 15th or did I make a typo on that? Is it the 12th?
I think it might be the 12th.
I think it's the 12th. I apologize, everyone.
Okay. That's okay.
My bad.
It's a Wednesday.
Okay. It'll be February 12th of 2025.
Sorry.
We usually hold these on Wednesday evenings when
It is
possible.
the 12th.
7:00. Okay. I'm glad you noticed that.
Well, I was looking, I'm like, wow, 2 15ths in a row. That's odd. And I'm like, huh, that's my error. All right.
I really appreciate you sharing this information with us tonight, both of you. So, and thank you for joining us. And as we mentioned earlier, it'll be up on the our IDA website within a week. Check it out there.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great December.
Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Ooh.
That was awesome, guys.